Hello, I'm Todd Price, and this is University of the Air.
So first of all, I want to thank you for coming up on a Saturday, busy day. If you could just introduce yourself, and we'll start talking about some of the legislative issues that we have.
My name is Bob Wirch. I'm the state senator from the 22nd District. That district covers basically most of urban Racine and Kenosha.
Thank you for coming out again today. So first, we've had a few conversations about the legislative process. And you've been in the Assembly, and you've done the Senate work, actually in the Senate. Tell me a little bit about how it works in the Senate and the Assembly, how that's changed over time, and bring us up to the front. What have you seen in your tenure in terms of the process?
Well, the legislative process has changed a lot. I was in originally when Tommy Thompson was the governor. And looking back at that time, Tommy was a moderate Republican. By that, I mean he was a Republican, but you could cut a deal with him. He was open to compromise. And he kind of kept the hardcore Republican special interest groups at arm's length. In other words, he ruled the state, and I say ruled because governors have a lot of power in the state. He was always in the middle, and you could work with him. And we obviously had our differences of opinions between Democrats and Republicans, but Tommy and a lot of the other Republicans were moderates at that time. The difference between then and now is that you have hardcore, I always say extremists have taken over the Republican Party. And I say that because they get more and more ideas from the right-wing think tanks, the Bradley Foundation, ALEC, the Koch brothers, the billionaires. That's where they get their ideas from. And they've been very successful at getting elected. And part of it is that bait and switch. I think this governor promises a lot of things, and then when he gets in office, he goes right away to the hardcore right-wing agenda and does not deliver on jobs, does not deliver on other promises. And so that's the difference. We used to have compromise back then. Now we have rigid Republican rule. And anyone who gets out of line, who dares to be a little bit moderate, like former Senator Dale Schultz, and you might even say Mike Ellis, gets taken out. They want rubber stamps for the hardcore right-wing agenda. And when they can't get that, they replace the people. So you have a lot of fear by Republicans now in office. Oh, I better do what the governor says, or I better do what leadership says, or they'll take me out in the next election. That's the difference between the way it was before and, unfortunately, the way it is now.
For a person that isn't steeped in politics, Senator Wirch, what you're portraying begs a question of a cabal or a conspiracy, and yet you're using this language about an extremist agenda. Can you name names? Give us, for the person that may not be paying attention to this, but what is really happening at the Capitol, and who are the people pushing agendas now?
Well, clearly the governor. We're a powerful governor form of government, whether it's it was Jim Doyle when the Democrats are in, whether it was Tommy Thompson back then, or Scott Walker. He sets the tone. He has been popular. As he said, he's won 3 elections in the last 4 years. But he's taken us into new areas. Next week we're going to talk about right to work, basically crippling unions out there. Tommy never did that. And the other Republican governors worked with the unions. They weren't crazy about them, but they worked with them. Our budget favors the rich and sticks it to the poor. That's really the only way I can describe it. And so obviously he helps big corporations and rich people. I always say in the last budget they declared war on poor people. They made it harder to get unemployment compensation, harder to get earned income tax credit, harder to get homestead. They refused to give us even a hearing on raising the minimum wage. all of the states around Wisconsin have a higher minimum wage than Wisconsin. Republicans think $7.25 an hour is a good living wage. And they thumb their nose at the people of Wisconsin. Why do I say that? Well, all the public opinion polls show 60 to 70% of the people, even a majority of Republicans, want a higher minimum wage. We had referendums all over the state last year in the election where people overwhelmingly, even Republican areas, say we want a higher minimum wage. Yet the right-wing Republican leadership in Madison refuses to give even a public hearing on that issue. That's one example of extremism.
And essentially what you're saying is even to consider these initiatives that would help out working families, frankly, because that's, as I'm understanding, most of the poverty are actually working families
Yes.
who hold jobs.
Yes.
It can't even get to the table.
Right, and they know that, for instance, raising a minimum wage is popular with the people of Wisconsin. So they don't want to have their members take a hard vote against it in public, so they simply kill it. They never bring it up for a committee hearing. They let the clock run out. That's what they did the last session. I had two bills. One was raising the minimum wage. The other one was wage theft to help low-income workers that are getting ripped off by employers. It would simply set up kind of like a contract. They would specify employer, employee, look, this is what you were hired in, these are the terms of your work, and so if there's a violation down the line, you have something to reference back to. Usually now it's his word against the employee's word against the employer, and it can also protect the employer from being sued. Now, even conservative states like Texas have passed versions of wage theft bills. Once again, Republican leadership would not even give it a hearing. That's why I say the war on the poor over and over again, and help the rich, but that's not the way they give their message to the public. They get elected and then they beat up on poor people once they get in office.
And what you describe is very disconcerting for the whole political process.
Yes.
Because it sounds to me like a winner-take-all, so that one party gets in, and in this case it's the Republicans, and their way or the highway? Is that what you're saying, that there's nothing that...
Yes, and I have to be honest about this. So we were probably like that, the Democrats, when we were in the majority and controlled everything. Although, like Democrats, we ended up squabbling among ourselves, and we're not as effective as these right-wingers are. And I truly believe, and you know, I'm just talking about getting back to the middle, getting back to compromise. And so I think to get there, it's important to maybe have one house controlled by one party, another house controlled by the other party, so they're forced to compromise. I think that's the best way out there now to get change. But let me say, that's extremely difficult because the Republicans kind of ruin the maps out there by gerrymandering the maps. In other words, every 10 years, for your listeners, with the census comes out and we redo the political maps. Well, Robin Vos and the other right-wingers did a job on us. They gerrymandered the state to make it easier for Republicans to get elected, so that, like in the Assembly, actually Democrats got more votes than the Republicans did, but the Republicans won an overwhelming number of seats because they had gerrymandered the maps out there to their advantage. That's what makes it harder for the public to elect people that represent them when the maps have been set up to the Republican advantage.
I'm really liking what you said, Senator Wirch, too, about this moderation and having people at the table, because I think for most citizens, they must see the value of at least having voices represented. That's what a democracy is about.
Yes.
And so when you meet with these folks, you're an insider, you're with and sit across the table from your colleagues who might be on the other side of the aisle. How do they feel about the damage that's being done or that you're perceiving, but it seems very real, to that deliberative process? What does that do for the future?
They enjoy the political advantage they've gotten out of the gerrymandering, quite frankly, and they don't admit to its gerrymandering. Yet, federal judges have recognized it when they've looked at it. So, they enjoy the right-wing advantage they have in the majority, quite frankly, and they kind of ignore the public when it comes to the wage theft bill, when it comes to a fair redistricting bill. They just look the other way and move on. They know that the public wants these healthy reforms, but they prefer to ignore them and move on to the right-wing agenda.
Surely, and I'm giving a lot of credit to the intentions of the other folks, there seems to be a willful ignorance, at least is what you're saying. But don't you think that there are some folks that must have pause to think about what damage is being done, for example, to the University of Wisconsin, or to public education, or certainly some of them must have relatives that are dependent on health care, that may even have been on food stamps at some point in their life. Are there people that have even a clue among these folks that are pushing this agenda of how hurtful these things can be?
Once again, I think they look back at Schultz, who dared to be moderate on 2 or 3 issues when was taken out in the next election by a hardcore right-winger. And they're afraid of that. They're afraid of losing their jobs. Some of them voice their concerns, voice their frustrations in the safety of a Republican caucus. And they say, I don't like that bill and that, but they're not willing to say anything in public because they'll get the Charlie Seitzes of the world, the people who say Rhino, Republican in name only, and start screaming at them. That's what they're afraid of, the right-wing talk show machine that gets on any Republican that dares to be moderate. That's what they're worried about, and it's kind of paralyzed our democracy, and it makes our atmosphere more partisan than I've ever seen it before.
I really like the way you frame it too, because that sheds some light on the tremendous and external pressure that's being felt, that speaks to issues I know that you're very concerned about, which is the money in politics. Can
Yes.
you speak quickly to the money in politics, and then we'll turn to another quick issue. How pervasive and corrosive is that today?
Let me give you one example. School choice. 5 or 6 Republican leaders who had to leave for one reason or another. Either they got in trouble with a scandal, or they tried for a higher office like United States Senator and were unsuccessful, were immediately hired by school choice for 6-figure incomes out there. Now, whereas Democrats got in trouble, they had to go out and earn a living. The Republicans were hired on Scott Jensen, who was in, years ago, who was in a scandal, Chuck Koala. Chuck Koala had to go out there and earn a living. Scott Jensen got his 6-figure salary. Jeff Fitzgerald, who ran for United States Senate, didn't make it, was immediately hired. So you have the powerful influence of former Republican leaders, now turned lobbyists, in there pushing against our public schools, for private schools, for charter schools and choice schools, and then a flood of money behind them that's helped every Republican out there when they're running for election. They can always count on a big chunk of school choice money. So surprise, surprise, the first bill when we get back after the election they're talking about is sticking it to the public schools and helping school choice. I believe you can make an argument, certainly, that is payoff to for the big money they got during the campaigns and the influence of the former Republican leaders who are pushing for school choice. That's just one example.
And that's a great one. It lends itself to my last question today, because we know you're busy, and I think this is a very enlightening interview. We'll have further conversations. This notion of choice. So as you know, we've had conversations about choice, especially in education. But in the right to work legislation, there's talk about choice to opt out of the union. And it struck me of how powerful and misunderstood this word is, because I'm imagining what's next. Choice dropped out of perhaps democracy altogether. Because
Right.
there's a slippery trajectory here. How do you feel that this has been used as a frame?
I would tease my Republican friends. Oh, you're all for choice now. You weren't pro-choice when it came to women's rights that came up a while ago. Pro-choice was a bad word back when it came to women's reproductive rights, but now they are for choice, meaning someone has a right to get out of a union. Let's take a look at that. I always use what they're saying is that you shouldn't have to pay dues if you're in a union. That's terrible. I flip it around and use it against them. I said, now suppose you're a new business in Kenosha or Racine, and you go to the Chamber of Commerce and you walk in the front door and you say, hey, I'm a new business. I want all of the rights and privileges of being in a chamber, but by the way, I don't want to pay you any money. They'd kick you right out the front door. But that's what the Chamber of Commerce and the Republicans want for unions. They want to legitimize freeloaders, people who will get all of the benefits, the wages, the benefits, the protection of a union, and not pay a dime. I mean, that's how ridiculous it is. They are promoting freeloaders so they can undermine unions. And they all use the glorious terms of choice and freedom and things like that. But no, they would never accept that at the Chamber of Commerce. But they want to push that off on unions.
So I guess any parting words, this is going to be portrayed and put together in a TV show probably after all of the ruckus next week. It's expected with the right to work. But any words, maybe encouragement for folks that are really scratching their head and wondering what's happening to their state?
My career has been fighting for the underdog, the people that don't have the big lobbyists, the big money behind them. But for us to turn around things in this state, we have to get out there and vote. We have to get back involved in the system. You have to tell your friends, neighbors, relatives, get out and vote. Otherwise, the big money people are simply going to keep sticking it to poor people, keep sticking it to our public schools. And we have to get back to moderation. We have to get back to fighting for the people instead of the right-wing think tanks. And the only way you can do that is by voting.
Well, I must say it's an honor to do this interview with you. I've respected you from afar and gotten to know you up close. And there's more work to be done, and keep up the spirits. We got your back. You're representing Kenosha to me in a fine and noble way. So thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you for having me on.
No, wait. Sincerely, it's a pleasure. I figured that we could talk for 3 hours.
Oh, yeah.
What we need to do is get this message out in 15 minutes. Right?
We're here today. I guess I should start by introducing myself. So my name's Jen. I am the director of a group called Wisconsin Jobs Now. WJN, you in the house? And WJN is a proud member of the Schools and Communities Uniting Coalition. You're the CU, make some noise! The mission of Schools and Communities United is really simple. It's to create the schools and the communities that we know our children deserve. I am a proud parent of 2 Milwaukee public school children. Sanaya, my son Kingston up there. So I know what it's like to see your class sizes go up every single year. To hear your principal tell you, I'm sorry, there's just no money to continue the program that was vital to your child. And I know the frustration that we're feeling as we know that education is the great equalizer, and yet our governor seems fit to try to destroy the public institutions that make this state great. So we are here today not to lie down, not to accept these cuts, but to fight back and to stand up here in Milwaukee, up in Madison, and all across this great state. Am I right? Yeah! So we're just going to hear from 2 quick folks because we want to get the perspective of parents and students who are facing these cuts. So first, let me introduce Angela. Angela is a parent in MPS. Give it up for Angela, everybody!
And a lot to fight for. I'm a public employee. I'm a graduate of UW Milwaukee. I work for the University of Wisconsin system today, and there's no escape. I have to go home and talk to my 3 public school kids about what $150 cut per pupil under this budget might mean to them. And they're tired of talking about budget cuts, and they're tired of saying goodbye to teachers, and they're tired of watching their friends go to school districts that are better funded. But the truth is, there aren't a lot of places left to go anymore. This budget cut, these budget cuts attacked our rural schools, they attack our urban schools, they attack our suburban schools, and now they're going after the University of Wisconsin system at the rate of $300 million. And that's just the first cut.
Everybody give it up for Angela! It is not easy to take all of the time away from all of the other responsibilities parents have to become advocates for their children's school. But that is what it's going to take if we want to restore the Wisconsin promise to every single child.
I have a 7-year-old sister who's in 2nd grade at Forest Home Avenue School. I was able to access and attend public education that helped me follow my dream to go to college. You know, if that is taken away from the community, I and many other students in MPS, well, that dream will fade away and will die with the community. What does this mean? This means that students and teachers alike will all be turned to the side. You know, I want to go to college, and my father and my mom both can't afford to take me and all of my brothers and sisters to go to school.
Right.
You know, I will have to probably drop out if. Well, my mom is a stay-at-home mom. My dad is a handyman at a small hotel in downtown Milwaukee. They can't afford to take everybody to school, and they can't afford to pay me for college, to pay for my college tuition. I will have no other option.
Thank you. Thank you, Raphael! We got you, Raphael! Students are not for sale!
That's right. Our kids are not for sale, and the future of this great state is not for sale. And I think it's important for folks to understand what this is really about. Because this isn't about competition, and it's not about choice. What it's about is the $5 billion that our country currently spends in public education, and the privatizers and the corporate profiteers who would like to get their hands on that money. They don't care about educating our kids. They're not worried about the students in rural Wisconsin who are showing up after spending an hour or 2 on the farm in the morning to learn all day and take a bus an hour and a half home because they don't have a community school. That is not who these privatizers care about. They care about profits. And we are not going to let Governor Walker or this legislature sell our kids to the highest bidder. Am I right about that? Let's explain, folks, right? So, WJN, we organize underpaid workers. And we call them underpaid. Lots of folks like to call them low wage or entry level. We call them underpaid because, let's be clear, the labor that fast food workers and home care workers and retail workers and janitors and security guards do, it creates billions and trillions of dollars in profits, right? So they're not low wage, they are undervalued and underpaid. And we talk to them about their aspirations. And Governor Walker, his plan for raising wages, he says he wants to help people learn more to earn more. Well, I ask you, how does somebody learn more when you cut $300 million from our university system? That's the wrong way for Wisconsin. And I want to lift up those bold students at the University of Milwaukee who have been protesting on campus since the day those budget cuts were announced. Let's give it up for UWM students. live. Oh, we can't go to his house. Is the governor's budget affecting your house?
Yes!
Did the governor bring his poor choices for Wisconsin to your front door?
Yes!
Then there is no reason why we shouldn't show up at his front door and let him know that it's the wrong way for our students. It's impacting our daily lives, and we're not going to go by quietly and let our kids do it.
So we tell them. We are the students. The mighty, mighty students. Fighting for justice. And education. Everywhere we go. People want to know.
And what you're doing out here today?
Hi, my name is Jeannie Zuleta from Art Below Zero. As you can see, we do ice sculptures, and we absolutely love what we do. We have 40 ice sculptures in front of the businesses here on 6th Avenue and 7th Avenue, a couple others off the beaten path. But here at Library Park, we wanted to show and share with people a live ice sculpting demo done by yours truly. And then we also have a graffiti wall where if you like, you can go write your own name in it. That's just so awesome. That's cool.
Good job, look it on.
Okay, Donza, give it a shot, buddy. Anza, tell me what you did.
Really tight.
What'd you do?
I wrote my name into the ice.
And don't wipe it off until you hand it back. You need some help?
Yep, help him out a little bit.
You want to help him?
No, please, sir. You're the expert.
Oh, he's doing great.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing. Take your time, Donza.
Hello.
Great job, Donza.
No, the capital E is capital E is
Right, good job. Wipe it off. Awesome.
Thank you so much.